Well, I think most of you know who I am. I started this, Mana Relief, but I started a company called Mana Tech in 1994. And I started the company around a discovery that had been made by actually a pharmaceutical company here in Dallas, Carrington Laboratories. And pretty unusual pharmaceutical company because they had nothing but non-toxic ingredients. That's completely out of the norm. But a group of investors went to Southwestern Medical School here in Dallas with a project. They said there's something in the gel of aloe vera that causes an immune response unlike anything that exists in medicine. And but it's labile. What that means is that if we take the gel out of the leaf, 24 hours later it has no activity at all. We don't know what it is. So if you can discover what it is, we could probably stabilize it. And if we can stabilize it, we can file a patent on that. And then the miracle of aloe for the last 2,000 years can come to life in product technologies. Got it approved as a vaccine adjuvant for veterinary medicine. So by turning on the immune system, all vaccines work better. So that was good. Then the last and biggest market they went after was the human drug market. But the FDA rejected their application to make it a drug because it didn't have a classical drug effect. So the FDA makes you prove that you can alter a process of disease with your drug or a biomarker. So you can make blood pressure go up, you can make blood pressure go down, you can manipulate the human body any way you want to with the drug. And this polysaccharide, which by the way they named acemannan, which is an abbreviated term for its chemical structure. It's an acetylated beta-1,4 mannan. So acetylated mannan became acemannan, and that's how they got the name. So when you put acemannan in the human body, it doesn't alter anything. So it doesn't have a drug effect. What it does is it strengthens the immune system, and it does that by activating a large white blood cell called a macrophage. And the macrophage orchestrates all of the immunomodulatory functions of the human immune system. And it just turns your immune system on, makes it work at a higher level than normal. And then your body starts doing what it's supposed to do, identifying problems and dealing with them, fixing damaged cells, destroying aberrant cells or cancer cells or whatever. And so you see people have these amazing recoveries. And it's not the miracle of aloe, it's the miracle of the human body to heal itself. Right. And acemannan is just a component that facilitates that. Okay, so in 1993, they got their rejection notice from the FDA to bring it into the market as a drug. And that's when I met the founders and the senior staff over at Carrington Laboratories. And I met with them because it was a relationship that I had with somebody else that had a relationship with them, and they put us together. And the first thing I did is I looked at their science, and they had 10 miles of science. I mean, as a pharmaceutical company, you got to know everything. You got to know what it does, is it toxic, how's it functioning, and overwhelming amount of science. The second thing is it worked on everything. There wasn't anything it didn't work on. Because when you, again, enhance immunology, you enhance recovery from autoimmune, degenerative, everything in between. It was just amazing. So I convinced them that they could never take that technology into the marketplace through retail. Vitamin shops and pharmacies and stuff, because you couldn't distinguish it from other aloe vera products in retail. Because people just walk down the aisle and look at all the products and look at all the pricing. This price was a lot more expensive than typical aloe. So I said, I think your best chance of getting this into the marketplace is as a dietary supplement through a direct sale model. Because in direct sales, you have people that are willing to share their experiences, tell other people about it, lead them to the science, if they want the science. And you build an organization of consumers that way. And there's nothing better than word of mouth in healthcare anyway, because everybody wants to feel better and they want to know how to achieve it. So I started a company called Mana Tech in 1994.
Awesome company, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. And we built it We expanded to 26 countries around the world. And it was just an incredible success story. In 2005, Business Week ranked us 5th best company in America because of the trajectory of growth that we had been on. I think we did $3 million our first year. We tripled it our second. We tripled it again our third. We tripled it again our fourth. We doubled it our fifth. I mean, it was an unbelievable experience. So then in 1997, this happened. This came out of nowhere. And it's because my wife and I, personally, not anything to do with our business, supported orphanages. We adopted all of our kids from all over the world. You've met my daughters. Yeah. From China and Puerto Rico and Guatemala and all over the place. So we were working with an orphanage organization in Romania. And the caregivers, met with a group of us and thanked us for our contributions and gave us an accountability. But at the end of her presentation, she said, it's heartbreaking to see what's going on with our children. They're sick all the time. We lose 30 to 40 kids a year. So what happens to kids all over the world is if they're malnourished, if they're exposed to toxicity, if they have bad water, they suffer from a thing called immunodeficiency. In other words, their immune systems become suppressed. And when that happens, they're susceptible to every chronic and infectious disease out there. And then because they live together, they all catch each other's stuff, and then it's out of control. They don't have any medicine. They can't do anything. So you got millions of kids with immunodeficiency, and I have the most natural, non-toxic, powerful, immunomodulating molecule that exists in nature. And right then I knew that I could help those kids. It's like, I don't care what else you do. You give them this Ace Mannin, their lives will dramatically change. So they were willing to do that. I sent it, believe it or not, in 5-kilo boxes, so 5 kilos of white powder, if you can imagine. Sending that all over the world. Sometimes it got through customs, sometimes it didn't. And eventually I set up distribution partners in various regions of the world that could import it and then redistribute it to orphanages within that region of the world. In fact, my distribution partner in Mexico, and we might be going there next week, is Vicente Fox, who's the former president of Mexico, and his wife. And they're feeding kids. They feed about 15,000 kids a day for us down in Mexico. So when we got back with them, she said, not only has it worked, our kids are healthier than they've ever been. They just mixed it in their food. That's it. Doesn't have any taste to it. Healthier than they've ever been. For the first time in over a decade, no children died in our organization. And she said, everybody that we're networked with around the world wants to know where can they get the magic white powder. Magic white powder. I said, either us or Colombia. There's only 2 places you can get magic white powder.
Yours is legal, though.
Mine is legal, non-toxic.
And lawful.
Yeah, so to meet that demand, and the more research I did on what kids are struggling with, the more I realized we could change the world if we could find a way to do it. Well, I didn't know any other way other than just to create a not-for-profit, which is what Manna Relief is. It's a 501c3, and I started raising money, to nourish kids with Ace Mannin. Never been in the not-for-profit business before. Took me 30 days to figure out it's full-time begging, part-time work. I mean, nothing happens unless you're raising funds.
That's right.
In the not-for-profit world. And that's such a small slice of the economy, charitable giving. And everybody's after it. Churches, Boy Scouts, UNICEF. I mean, everybody's after that little thin slice of the economy, which is charitable giving, and so was I. But it's all I knew to do. And because of Manatech, I had a huge distributor base around the world that was very compassionate about supporting our program. So that's where the majority of our funding came from. People would just sponsor 5 kids a month, And then 2008 came along. The economy took a nosedive. Do you remember when the banking industry melted down?
Our company did too.
Yeah, I remember that. Was that 2008?
Yeah.
Same year?
Yeah.
Whew, it was a bad year.
It was a bad year.
I lost 60% of my donor base in that year, which means I had to cut off distribution to about 35,000 children.
Wow.
And so I started getting emails and texts from caregivers going, we know you're struggling, but you can't cut us off.
No
You know,
way.
our kids are getting sick again, our kids are struggling. You got to find a way to support us. And so I started looking for a new funding model for Manna Relief. I thought the charity model is not sustainable, it's not dynamic enough. I can never get to millions of kids through this model. So I didn't know what it was, I just started looking. I was sharing this problem with President Fox, and he said, have you ever heard of social business?
Social business.
And I said, you know, sounds familiar. He said, social business is the only thing that can provide sustainable solutions to the world's biggest problems. And he said, what's happening is entrepreneurs are going into business, creating for-profit businesses that throw off a lot of profitability, and they're using that profitability to fund their not-for-profits. And that's called social business. And it's a top-line donation. So the most typical way to do it is buy one, give one, like Tom's Shoes. Every time somebody buys a pair of shoes, they donate a pair of shoes. That's called top-line giving, because it doesn't matter how much profit you're making. When a pair of shoes is sold, a pair of shoes is given. And he said, I'm going to host the first conference on social business in Latin America next year. My guest speaker is going to be Mohammed Yunus, who is the Nobel Prize winner, laureate from Bangladesh that created the concept of microfinance.
Yes, I saw
Yeah.
him on TED.
Yeah, TED Talk. Yeah, so microfinance is a mechanism where for-profit entities loan small amounts of money to put people into business. And Bangladesh is the poorest country in the world, and he impacted 40 million people in that country with microfinance. That's why he won the Nobel Prize. Today it's the #1 strategy for addressing poverty. So I said, and it's not a not-for-profit, it's a for-profit, it's a bank.
Yeah.
But he had to start the bank to create the lending mechanism of microfinance. And he said, I think you should come down and be a part of that, and we should sit down with Mohammed Yunus and strategize how he took on poverty, how do we take on childhood malnutrition? And so I did. Went to the conference. It was just the most eye-opening experience I think I've ever had, because it was like, for the first time I realized that what I'm really good at doing, which is business, could be attached to what I'm really passionate about doing, which is saving children. And if I could put those two things together, I mean, what else would you want to do with your life, right? So I came back to Dallas, and of course my first inclination is to retrofit social business right into Manatech, right? I mean, I started the company, I was the chairman of the board. Sat down with my board of directors. Remember, I took my company public in 1999, and once you take your company public, your board of directors is obligated to only one thing, and that's called shareholder equity.
Right.
Not feeding kids. It's not that they're bad people, but by law, they're obligated to that. And there's a class action litigator on every corner waiting for the opportunity to sue a company for violating what's called their fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder. We had been sued by the FDA. We'd been sued by the state attorney general, you know, or all around the types of claims that you could make for Ace Mannon. We survived all that, but my board had absolutely no tolerance for risk at all. It's like, we love you, we love what you're doing, but we can't support it. You know, every penny of our profit has to go to shareholder equity. So that was about 4 years ago now. And so I went home, talked to my wife about it, you know, I mean, we'd been discussing it, and it's like, we could stay at Manatech and live happily ever after. You know, I mean, it was still a global entity, it still is today.
Still is,
And You know, I mean, we make an incredible living. Our lifestyle is unbelievable, and we can feed 30,000 kids a day, but 6 million kids a year die. And we have the solution. And so what do? Do we stay comfortable, or do we start over? So sat down with our kids, and of course our kids came from these orphanages, you know, they know what it's like over there, and they all said, let's just go for it. So I resigned from Manatech and forfeited all of my stock options and everything, you know, and decided to start over. I needed two things. I needed a new company, and I didn't want to start from scratch. It just takes too long, too much investment of time and money to start a company. So I found a company in Dallas called Evolve Health, and I knew the president of the company. And they had some good technologies. You know, they're a nutritional company just like Manatech was. Manatech just had the Holy Grail. You know, we had Ace Manning. Nobody had it at that time. And the patents were just expiring, though, on Ace Manning. So I knew it would become a commodity if other companies chose to pursue it. So it was just a matter of time before the uniqueness of that product ended. So I needed a company, and I found Evolve Health. And I needed a technology to build on. Because in this industry, if you don't have something unique and timely, you're competing with 10,000 nutritional companies. You know, and there's no life in that at all.
That was always my issue with nutrition.
Yeah. So, but Manatech was unique. And then from time to time, a flyer would come along, like a noni juice, you know, or a goji berry, or a pignogenol, and those all had unique stories, and no one else had it, but they were all commodities within a couple of years. No, if you don't own it, you build the market for it, and then it shows up on the shelves of Walmart, and then it's over for this industry. Because now your customer goes, wait a minute, I can buy it down there for 95 cents and I'm buying it from you for $2. Why? You know, so Ace Manning, we could protect the price because we owned it. And it was patented, nobody else could have it. And it was so impactful that people couldn't live without it. So it was the perfect nutritional component. So I'm looking for something like that. What I'm looking for most of all is what I can provide to children. Because when I left, Manatech cut me off access to Ace Manning for the kids. And that's what was saving their lives. So I went to Los Angeles to what's called the Natural Product Show. This is like 3 years ago. And coming down the aisle, there's about 35,000 people at this thing. Coming down the aisle right towards me is a man named Dr. Santiago Rodriguez. And he was the PhD that ran Carrington Labs facilities in Costa Rica. He made Ace Manning. He developed the technology for stabilizing it, for extracting it, for putting it into products. He made the product that I sold for 20 years. And so, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? I said, I hear you left Carrington. Why? And he goes, well, the Koreans did some really interesting research on Ace Manning and found that these polysaccharides, we knew this, came naturally in a very wide range of molecular weights. So you had little bitty molecules, medium-sized molecules, very big long molecules, all strands of this mannose sugar, but just different sizes. And he said, we've always known that not all of these are activating the immune system. We just didn't know which ones did and which ones didn't. So we just stabilized and freeze-dried everything, and that's what you had. He said the Koreans figured out it was a very narrow range. And once I saw that research, I went back into the lab and created a new way of processing Ace Manning out of aloe vera. I stabilize it like I've always done, but then I pre-digest these long chains into these size molecules. So I have 5 times the immune activation, and I can do it for half the cost.
Wow.
That's what I sold for 20 years. He could do 5 times better for half the cost. I said, what are you going to do with that? He said, I'm going to license it to a company. And I said, by divine intervention, we're here today with each other. Right? And so, and of course he knew I could market that technology. I sold more aloe vera in the world, maybe than anybody. So he did license it to me. So then I started providing it to the kids, and they responded faster and better than ever before. Okay. A month later, Manitech sued me because I had a better product. I had the same product, only a better version of it. And I mean, you know, it was basically to keep me out of the market as long as they possibly could. Because it's a bad thing when the founder of the company leaves and finds a better technology that's exactly like that, only 5 times better, right?
Yeah.
So it took me a year and a half to get past that lawsuit. I was at Starbucks a lot during those
Yeah,
years.
I know. I remember you being there.
Just sitting there, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the next court date. You know, they spent over $1 million on that lawsuit. Anyway, the week before trial, they called and dropped the lawsuit because they didn't have a lawsuit. You know.
Were you out?
Whew.
Made money.
Yeah, it cost me a lot to go through that. Anyway, so then I brought that technology about 10 months ago into Evolve and started building around that technology. What I found is, again in this industry, first of all in North America, the direct sales industry has been really flat.
Yeah,
And
it's been dead.
It's been dead. Too many people have too many options these days.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
I don't know if you read it or not. There was an article in the direct selling news called "The Gig Economy," and it says everybody has a gig now. You know, there's 1,000 ways to make money. You can drive for Uber, Lyft. You can do just about anything to make a couple extra $100. And so, so what does work today in networking? I think everybody in our industry is looking for what is the next wave. You know, what is the next real legitimate opportunity? Instead of 10,000 companies having access, it's just a handful of companies now that really can move the needle. But you have to have something that captures the imagination of the professional networker. The good thing about Ace Manning is it worked. The bad thing is it's 25 years old. It's not a new story anymore. You know, I mean, I leveraged that story to death over 20 years at Manitech, and it worked. And we built a global business. So I'm looking around the industry trying to find what is the next wave, what is coming, especially in nutrition that I could do. And out there on the fringes was this thing called hemp oil.
What's it called?
Hemp,
No, yeah.
CBD.
Yeah, CBD. Yeah, I have it.
yeah.
It's good stuff.
So CBD, it stands for cannabinoid, and that's a molecule that exists in the hemp plant. The problem with hemp is it's part of the cannabis family. Cannabis has 2 plants, marijuana and hemp. And the government years ago classified them both together. So it was illegal to grow hemp because it was classified as a Schedule I narcotic, just like cocaine, you know. And in hemp, in marijuana, 20% is THC of the cannabinoids, which is the narcotic. In hemp, it's less than 0.3%, so there's hardly any in it. But it still got classified, and so it was illegal. Then came medical marijuana, and the whole nation changing around it, which brought back the hemp industry. So it's kind of an underground industry out there, and growing a little bit, but not really, and nobody really knew if it's legal or illegal. And then the Farm Bill passed in December.
Right.
And the Farm Bill segregated hemp from marijuana, turning it back into the classification of a food rather than a narcotic. The analysts out there say that the hemp business will grow to $22 billion in the next 4 years.
People are positioning themselves right now.
Oh my gosh, it is unbelievable. Okay, so when I found stabilized Ace Manning, the aloe vera industry was $5 billion. So we're talking about the next 4 years, something growing 4 times bigger than that in 4 years. And the aloe vera industry had been going for 50 years, you know. So, I mean, it's inconceivable what that's going to look like. That's why everybody's positioning themselves for it. So, but as I started looking into it, and this is before the Farm Bill, I thought until that passes, it doesn't make any sense to try to pursue it. It's just too high risk. Might as well wait until they legalize it. You're a little behind the curve at that point, maybe, unless they legalize it quickly. And they didn't know if it'd be this year or next year or the following. They didn't know. So I'm thinking, how do you make it unique? I don't know. But I have to look into it. It's just too big of a market. How do I position myself? About that time, about 4 months ago, I had a call from a doctor that I'd worked with. We had a lot of doctors in Manatee, and this guy was in Florida. And he said, I'm working with a guy here in Florida that is providing a hemp CBD product to our hospitals. You ever heard of hemp? And I said, oh yeah, CBD? He goes, yeah. He said, this guy does something really unique. First of all, how you process CBD has a lot to do with its efficacy, but anybody can process it appropriately. But he said inside of hemp are two molecules. One is CBD. And CBD are these molecules that influence receptor sites on what is called your endocannabinoid system in the human body. So it's all these receptors on your brain cells, spine, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. Every immune cell has these receptor sites. And what cannabinoids do is they turn them on and off. So I can activate the immune system with ace-mannan, but I can't make it turn off. Cannabinoids make it turn off or turn on. So if you got an autoimmune disorder, you want it to turn off, because autoimmune means your immune system's attacking you for some unknown reason. You know, it's not down-regulating. And that's what cannabinoids do. On the other hand, if you got cancer, you're not getting enough upregulation. It's not recognizing the aberrant cells and destroying them. So you need upregulation. So, so how does that work? Well, the cannabinoids can't dock to these receptor sites. They need to be connected. What connects them are molecules called terpenes that are in the plant. So if you get what's called full spectrum hemp, you get the terpenes, the flavonoids, and the cannabinoids. This doctor said, you know, looking at the composition of hemp, it's got a lot of cannabinoids and a little bit of terpene. He said, so what everybody's doing is raising the potency of the CBD oil, you know, trying to increase efficacy. He said, in order for these cannabinoids to link to the receptors, it takes the terpenes. There's not many terpenes. I think you'd be a lot better off adding terpenes instead of more CBD. And he said, well, that's interesting. So he went back, and for 2 years they played around with different formulas of terpenes that existed in the plant. And he stumbled onto one that increased the efficacy about 5 times, more than standard CBD. And he patented it, filed a patent on it. Okay, and I said, well, that's a fascinating story. Why are you calling me? And he said, well, I was sitting down with him the other day. We were just talking about his discovery and what it was doing in the hospitals and all these patients and all this stuff. And he said, you know, one of my businesses was in Africa, and I saw all these kids suffering over there. And I always thought if I could ever do anything about that, that would be what I'd want to do. And he said, now I've got a product that I think can really help. I don't have any idea how to get it to him. And this doctor said, I know somebody that does. His name is Sam Castro. You need to call him. So he put me on the phone with this guy. And he told me a story. And I said, yeah, I can help you get your product into Africa, no doubt. And I think it sounds like a fascinating product. And he said, what do you do for these kids? And so I told him about ace-mannan. And by the time I got through telling him about ace-mannan, you know, he's going, well, what would happen if we put our 2 proprietary technologies together? And I said, I think we'd see results that neither one of us have ever seen. Change their life. But I've never seen anything like the CBD thing that's about to come.
Well, I haven't either. I mean, I just didn't
And
know how they
it's-
was going to do it. But what I'm hearing from you, when you combine those two products,
Mhm.
that's rare. And
Nobody has
nobody's
that.
doing that.
Nobody will do that.
Welcome, Concepts of Wealth. Coming from Concepts of Wealth. Hey, did you just like that video? Isn't that a great video? Here's an opportunity to make a difference. Having good health and sharing that's going to make a difference in other people's lives based on the giving principle. Hey, remember, positioning and timing is number one right now. We're going to launch March 4th, 2019. Here's an opportunity to get in position and be at the right place at the right time to be successful with a group of people that has a heart that want to love and want to give and make a difference in other people's lives. So don't waste your time. Get involved. Connect. Become a team of great leaders who's willing to do what it takes to help other people and make a difference in life. Remember, go to samgross.myevolve.com. See you at the top.